Hey everybody, all of my good friends from the Alberta Ag Society and all of you that joined the President's Summit. Sorry I'm a day late. Apologize for that. Been a little hectic, a little busy. Had to get in the studio, but here we are now. So 2 weeks ago, I asked you some questions in an attempt to help you define what you're about as an organization. Then the last week, I asked you to clarify. Now why? Before we can create a marketing plan for the recruitment of people's time, talent, and treasure, before we can develop a fund development plan for the recruitment of people's time, talent, and treasure, we've got to be able to define ourselves in the marketplace. Today's day and age, the battle for people's time, talent, and treasure is more intense than it's ever been in my lifetime and perhaps in yours. We've moved from an obligatory, that participation in community activity was obligatory, to the you prove it to me that you're worth my time, talent, and treasure. So if we're going to compete in this highly competitive environment where people are saying, prove to me, then we've got to be able to define for them what we're about and clarify for them what we can do, what they can expect from us. So before we can market, we have to answer those questions. So quickly to review those questions. The first question I asked you was, why do you exist? What's your point? What's your purpose? What's your deep and compelling why? What purpose do you serve? Why is the community better because of you? What value do you bring? These key questions help define for outsiders what your reason for being is. And if it's compelling to them, relevant to them personally, they're going to jump on board. But if it's clouded, if they're not sure, then they won't give you in your time, talent, and treasure because they're getting hit with 17,000 media impressions a month. So it has to be crystal clear. But before it can be crystal clear outside, it's got to be crystal clear inside. So these are tough questions, courageous conversations that you have to have. Then we finally said, what is it you do that no one else in your area does? See, again, to define yourself in the time, talent, and treasure giving marketplace. So by defining through those simple questions, optically from the outside, I can quickly know whether I want to be a part of you or not. Then those clarifying questions. What can people expect to gain through an interaction with you? And whether that's a volunteer, a donor, a participant, or just a general community member, what can they expect to gain? So that's an intentional exercise. So that before the interaction ever occurs, you've intentionally attempted to to clarify what that interaction will be like. And you can explain that expectation. Well, the more I can explain it, the more likely it is that I can manage it and control it and ensure that the expectation is met, if not exceeded. Then the second question of last week's email that I asked you was, what's the expectation of those stakeholders? In other words, what can they expect from you, but now what do you expect from them in terms of time and effort and participation or contribution of money and so on? What do I want from people? So I'm clarifying what they can expect from an interaction with us, but then I'm clarifying what we expect back from them. Again, to define and clarify in the marketplace what we are, who we are, but also what people can expect. And then clarifying what's your ideal volunteer, your ideal participant, your ideal contributor. Now, once you have all that information, the next step is telling that story. So all of those answers are the beginnings of your narrative. Why we exist, who we are, what you can expect from us, what we expect from you, who's our ideal participant. That's your narrative. And that's that simple. Now I take that narrative and I ask myself the following question. What's the most trusted conduit of communication to be able to push that narrative through to hit the stakeholders I'm trying to get to? If the stakeholders I'm trying to get to are retirees, what's the best conduit to push that narrative through to get to those retirees. If it's youth, we want more youthful participation in our community. What's the most trusted conduit of communication? One conduit of communication is face-to-face. Another conduit of communication is the more typical or traditional paper, brochure, flyer, and the like. Another conduit of communication might be virtual, Facebook, a website, instant message, YouTube video, multimedia. These are three basic conduits of communication. So it's not enough to create your message based on the questions we've asked over the last 2 weeks. It's not enough to know who your stakeholders are that you want to get to. Then I've got to know the best conduit to get to them, and I would suggest you, based on the stakeholder group, it's going to be slightly different. In our time together, I talked to you about identifying the people of influence that you would want to target. But knowing that conduit is critical. So I've got my narrative developed, why we exist, what we do, how we're different in the marketplace, what people expect, what people can expect, what we expect from them. I know the stakeholders I'm trying to get to, and now I know the conduit I'm trying to get to them through. Then it's just a matter of laying out that strategic plan to get to them. It's all about building relationships. That's all it's about. It's not about raising money or recruiting volunteers. It's just about building trust. That's it. Why? Because that's what people are longing for. They're longing to be a part of something that stands for something, that they clearly understand what it is and what it's about and what it accomplishes, that they know clearly what they can expect, and they know what's expected of them. When I define and clarify those things, and then I approach them through a conduit that they trust, and then all I do is attempt to build relationship with them, the time, talent, and treasure comes easily. It flows easily. It's not a twisting of the arm. I'll hit you with an email and a video that talks about that fund development piece and some key aspects of the fund development. It's going to be slightly counterintuitive. It's going to be a little bit different because basically, we'll unpack it a little bit more, but basically all we're going to do is lay down options of how people can participate. Just lay down options. So whether it's their time, here's some options of how you can give your time. Whether it's their treasure, here's some options of how you can give your treasure. Or it's their talent, here's some options of how you can give their talent. Because we've defined and clarified, because we've communicated through a trusted conduit of communication, we're building relationships. Once the relationship is built and we give them the options of how they want to participate, they'll participate. I didn't say they'd give $1 million, but I say they would give something, some time, some talent, some treasure. All right, so think about trusted conduit of communication of that stakeholder group that you want to penetrate. We'll talk more about this concept of using a relational-based, trust-based strategy to gain people's time, talent, and treasure. Have a great weekend. See you later, everybody.